When we talk about regulation, on which front do you think the regulation needs to occur? Does it need to happen on the manufacturers who are making the juices that go into these cigarettes? Maybe they need to put safer chemicals, or, I mean, I don't know if there are safe chemicals in general to be inhaling, but maybe safer products to inhale. Does the regulation need to come on the marketing, where you can only market in a certain way, or then on the consumers, you can only buy it and you can only use it in these certain places?
Right. I think it can occur at all those levels. I think it actually needs to. I think that the idea that in the manufacturing process to create some set of standards, some way that within an electronic cigarette product, the public knows what goes into it and what is actually being burned. And that type of information, I think, the government should regulate how that is provided to consumers. I think the idea of marketing is a little more complex here. I do think this should not be marketed to children. I would be very concerned, and I know there are reports of electronic cigarettes with bubblegum flavors and other flavors that are clearly geared towards a younger population, teenagers, maybe even younger. This is a device that at minimum provides nicotine, which is an addictive substance to the brain. And as I said, if you're going to start someone on that product who's not already smoking, that's not a public health service. There's clearly a negative, potential negative impact, and I think children need to be protected from that. The last issue is of the consumer, how you would regulate use of the product. I think that's the most challenging of the three. There is a group of folks who believe that electronic cigarettes are inherently bad because even if they're not bad themselves, they re-normalize the idea of someone sitting there and taking a puff. And one of the, I think, great strides that have been made in the public health community, in fact, the community at large,
is making smoking not cool.
Over the last 20 years, it's remarkable. When I grew up, having a cigarette in your mouth was the coolest thing to have. And I'm not that old. So this is 20, 25 years ago. Nowadays, I don't see that the case. You are shunned. You can't be in the restaurant. You can't be on the airplane. You can't be near anybody.
You smell bad.
You smell bad. Your teeth go yellow. Your skin wrinkles. And you're putting other people at risk for disease with secondhand smoke. So you are absolutely shunned. I think the electronic cigarette renormalizes behavior and potentially would allow others to smoke regular cigarettes with more impunity from a social perspective. And so that's also an additional concern. Not my number one concern, but that is something that perhaps regulators need to be sensitive to when we decide where people can light up an electronic cigarette, which is a matter of, as you know, great debate.
There hasn't been much regulation on that front thus far, but you have seen cities, even Boston, we're here in Boston, you can't smoke them inside anymore, you can't smoke them in public places. This is something new. What do you think on, this feels like very knee-jerk reaction, very quick, no research, just going ahead and covering all fronts.
Correct. I actually agree with you there. I think it's a little premature. Having information about the scientific impact of smoking an electronic cigarette on the cells in your airway and the cells in your body, and understanding better how those cells respond to that damage, whether they're able to repair it or not, and what types of diseases might manifest downstream of that exposure is absolutely critical in not only informing the public of the choice they're making, but informing regulatory bodies of how do they deal with marketing of the product to kids, with whether someone should smoke in a restaurant an e-cigarette or not. And without the data to support the health consequences of this product, it's very difficult to make what I would consider an educated decision in this space.
Feels like an emotional pull.
It is. It's purely based on emotion. And I think in this day and age, we have academic scientists working in this space who need time and resources to develop data sets that would help inform that decision. And that's what society needs to do here, is invest in the R&D, in the science behind electronic cigarettes, understanding what the product does, and then make a decision in our society. And there still will be emotion involved, but is this something we want to allow children to do? Is this something we want to allow you to do in a restaurant surrounded by others? Is this something where you've got to regulate on the product exactly what's in it? And without that kind of data, those decisions, I think, are purely emotional and are not educated.